Fatigue is very different from feeling tired. When you're feeling tired, it's more in the eyes, and you're just feeling, feeling a bit tired today, very much around the eyes. When you're feeling fatigued, the way that I describe it is, it's like you're wading through water. Everything just feels slow and hard, and everything feels like difficult than before, even kind of day-to-day stuff. In fact, when I was at my worst, I couldn't even order the online food shopping, knowing that the food was going to help me feel better. And I've got more stories on that coming along. But it's basically from the mind and from the body, and it can also be things like hormone imbalance, and it can also be other stresses within the body and stresses that are going on around us. So there's lots of different things that impact us to take our energy. But in a nutshell, I was diagnosed with adrenal fatigue 6 years ago, and it's not widely accepted really as a kind of condition. It's usually called a theory, even though many people talk about adrenal fatigue, and it's getting a little bit more widely known. And there's a few reasons for that it's not kind of widely accepted in the medical industry. One is that doctors are generally trained on looking at extremes of things. So if you've ever found yourself putting your blood tests in and things have come back clear, which is brilliant news, but at the same time you're kind of thinking, but surely there's something, why am I feeling like this? I shouldn't be feeling this tired all the time. Well, the results actually only look at real extremes. So in adrenal fatigue, that will be something called Addison's disease or thyroidism. So you could still be extremely ill in this respect, but it not show up on the actual system. The other thing is that generally speaking, it's when you have an appointment at the doctor's, it's one symptom and one solution. So it's not something that we look at holistically. And that's often why pills are prescribed. And I am not for or against pills. I definitely think there's a time and place for everything. I've been with pills, I've been with alternative, and I would advocate for both of them. But the fact remains is that there's not enough time really per patient to have a look at the whole system holistically. The other reason is if you were to look at all those other things as part of the body as you study to be a doctor, you would be studying for the rest of your life, because we can never know everything about the human body. Of course, there are exceptions, and there are some amazing doctors that are exploring all these different approaches. And certainly one thing that they would say to you is diet. Okay, what are you eating? And that is a big healing component of adrenal fatigue. Now, the problem is when you've got fatigue is that you can't actually be bothered cooking. Like I say, sometimes you haven't even got the energy to think about what to eat, never mind actually go out and get the food shopping. So something that I've been working on a while is a bundle. It's adrenal fatigue bundle, and it comes with like meal plans and stuff. I've been working with adrenal fatigue naturopathic doctor. I'll talk to you about that later. But around 4 years before I realized I had something called adrenal fatigue, I was exploring everything. Like I had all the blood tests, I had all the different, everything. And luckily it did come back clear, and that was great news, as I say. But I kind of explored it for so long and there was no results that I just kind of decided to accept, you know what, maybe I'm just one of those people. Maybe I'm just knackered all the time. Maybe I'll never be like the others, and that I'll always have to have my afternoon naps and everything. And it wasn't until I came back and completely crashed. So there's different stages of adrenal fatigue. You have got, when I say came back, I lived overseas for 8 years. I was working in quite a high energy corporate position, and came back due to there was a death in the family. There was all sorts basically, and this adds to this cumulative that actually builds up and gives you adrenal fatigue. Before you have your collapse, you actually become quite hyper, so you're really living off your adrenal glands. And it wasn't until I came back and was hit with loads more stress that I actually had my final collapse. And somebody said to me, have you ever heard of functional medicine doctor or naturopathic doctor? And I said no, because I hadn't, I'd explored everything down the traditional route and not heard of this. So a naturopathic doctor or a functional medicine doctor is somebody who looks at the whole system. And I'm talking your hormones, because your hormones are pretty connected to adrenal fatigue. So Rue, I'm just going to stop there and say, Rue says, I've often been told with blood results it's low end or normal, or it's low, but I'm not concerned. But my answer is, if it's not normal, there must be a reason, and I personally feel it's significant. Don't lose faith in your path, Rue, because you will find what you're looking for. I need to speak to you about my daughter. Yeah, absolutely. Please do. My mission actually is to tell more and more people about this, because I've been through this the hard way. I've really gone to the depth of absolute fatigue, given up and decided this is just who I am. There's nothing wrong with me. Gone to the point where I've thought I'm just a hypochondriac. Is there something wrong with my mind? To the point where I feel like really, really lazy, and maybe I should be working harder. And all these things that I want to talk to you about, because it is both the mind and the body, and I'll come to that. But that's when I discovered that there was another way to heal myself, okay? And that's when I really threw myself into more about wellness. I started to learn about hypnotherapy, neuro-linguistic programming, and the naturopathy side. So becoming a naturopathic doctor is something that I wasn't prepared to do, because it just takes just as long time as it is to become a doctor. I would love to, but what I've done instead is partner with my wonderful friend and colleague, Gabby, who does all of that. So together we kind of fill the gaps for each other. We're like two different sides of the same coin. So adrenal fatigue has actually also been given the term disease of 1,000 names, because again, there's no official term for this. There's been loads of studies and articles done on this even hundreds of years back, and have just been like pushed away as nothingness. But if you look around at all the people around the world, everyone's knackered, and it's because we're living in this system that praises busyness, that, oh yeah, I'm really stressed about this, oh yeah, we're starting to move through it a little bit. But the way that we live and the way that we work is generally accepted that everyone's knackered and everyone is great to be busy, right? And that is why it's really hard to go against the grain of society. So as I mentioned, it can impact everyday jobs. So this is a trigger point for me. This is a red flag when I'm feeling fatigued again, is when I'm thinking, I really want to make something healthy to eat. I just can't, right? And that's when I know that there's something not right, and I go straight into my adrenal fatigue recovery. I will never get to the place that I was before, and that place was when, I love going for walks, but I couldn't. I would go for the tiny little walk, and then I would have to lay down, let my body settle, and then I'd get up again. It was really, really bad at one point. I know I will never get to that place because I've already been there. So you can't unknow what you already know. It doesn't mean that you're not going to drop back and fall into a little bit of fatigue from time to time, but you start to recognize the symptoms quicker, and you get better at saying no and all that head stuff that actually makes us worse. So I'm coming on to that. So what happens is, with adrenal fatigue, it's cumulative over the years. In some cases, it can be very, very short cumulative. You might have never had insomnia, anxiety, or depression, or any of these things, and suddenly it can knock you out of the blue. Now, with something that we're all experiencing at the moment, such as this pandemic, it would not be surprising if the majority of us have adrenal fatigue, and only since March, because we've all collectively dealt with a lot of stuff, all of us together, but also our individual stresses as well. But in most cases, it's something that's gone on for a long time. So it could be that you've been eating bad for a long time. It could be that where you live, the environment, you may have heard of the sick building syndrome, where there's like chemicals within the building. It could be chemicals that you're using on yourself. It could be that you've had a lot of antibiotics. It could be that you've had a lot of psychological or emotional stress. Now, all these things build over the years, and they're things that can happen to us all the time. But if it happens in quite a relatively short period with no respite in between, this is when it can develop into adrenal fatigue. So like I said, there's two parts to it. There's the hyper, really anxious, like working from a level of up here, not being able to relax, but absolutely exhausted at the end of the day. And then there's the hypo, which means the adrenals are not working anymore. So you're completely out of fuel. And that is when you're wading through water. That's that point. So when you're feeling hyper, you actually can start to recognize that you're about to go hypo, which means you're about to crash, and you can stop yourself. So you could be like a typically active person, and I think I can relate to that. I'm a very active person, and it can also be a little bit of my downfall. So what happens is I overwhelm myself. Now, when things are really stressful in my environment around me, which is what's going on this year, I go to my coping mechanism, right? And my coping mechanism is overwhelm. Brilliant. So you might have something else. Your coping mechanism might be eating the wrong foods. It might be over exercising or not exercising or something else. It might be over worrying about somebody or something or your business. So when we identify our coping mechanisms, it comes a little bit easier to know that we're kind of falling onto that negative spiral. So for me, I have to step back. I have to tell myself, what can I say no to? What can I step back from? What can I cancel? And sometimes it takes a breakdown to do that, right? So I've had two pretty intense breakdowns, I would call, this year based on this overwhelm. But what always happens, it's like that calm before the storm. And as I say, there's always a storm before the calm as well. When you have that breakdown, you have a breakthrough and you feel like light again. And you think, why on earth have I been pushing myself to such extreme, whether it's physical or mental, all this time? And I've just made that decision to stop because I had to, because my body's made me, or my mind has made me, and everything feels different. So this is one of the things that we can do when we're building up into adrenal fatigue, and I'll come on to some more tips later. But the body knows no difference between stress. So whether you've had surgery, whether there are chemicals that I mentioned, antibiotics, psychological stress, emotional stress, it doesn't know no difference. So if there is a build up to that, that's when you're vulnerable to have your adrenal fatigue. So I'm just going to draw something here, and hopefully you can see this as I'm doing it. But if you imagine, and I did this recently at one of my mini retreats, that for every bit of stress that you have, you need relaxation. So if I start here, it's kind of opposite as this, so I'll do my best. So let's say that you've had a block of high stress. If that is the high level, that is normal, and that is relaxation, or just generally okay, and relaxation comes here. If you've just had a high level of stress, ideally what you want is to mirror that with some relaxation. Okay. Chances are, let me just take a wild guess here, is that has been going on, okay, like that. Maybe it's come down a little from time to time, then it's gone back up, then it's gone super high, but you've been living in this anxiety and stress for quite a long period of time. So if you've not managed to add in some relaxation in between there, where an actual break, or it could be just to pause, then it's going to build. So what you want to do is try to mirror it. Now, obviously, in reality, that's not always the case. So sometimes if you know that you can't have some downtime, then you make sure that you've got something booked in there that mirrors that in a different way. It's a little bit more that I talk about in the webinar that I'm doing coming up. So on the 22nd of November, I'm doing a free webinar, a little bit more detailed about this adrenal fatigue. So I'll come back to you on that. Right, so we can't discriminate from age or gender either. So we talk a lot about hormones, but that's also applicable to men. We always associate hormones with women, but it's also men as well. Cortisol is what happens when we've got too much adrenaline in the body. Cortisol is the stress hormone. So if your hormones are imbalanced in this way, it goes without saying that it impacts your sex hormones as well. So, and it can be vice versa. So if you've got, for example, if you're going through either pregnancy, post-pregnancy, perimenopause, menopause, post-menopause, right? That means that your hormones are probably somewhat imbalanced from time to time. That imbalance of hormones impacts your adrenal glands and your cortisol, in turn potentially giving you adrenal fatigue, or at least some symptoms of that, which could be insomnia, for example. Now, it can work the opposite way. So if you've got a lot of other stresses, chemical, environmental, food, bad food, or emotional, psychological, it can impact your sex hormones. I hope that makes sense. So again, I'll be talking a little bit more about that another time. But for me, I put a lot of blame on my adrenal fatigue from my experience in my corporate world. And don't get me wrong, it did have a big impact on my well-being. But when I look back, a lot of it came from the type of person that I am. So the way that I approach life and the way that I think. And it took a really long time to get there, to actually accept that part of why I feel ill when I get ill is because I'm overdoing it. So in that case, I've been working on my mind. I've been trained in neuro-linguistic programming, hypnotherapy. I've been looking at just stepping back and saying no. So, for example, this weekend, I actually decided to drop one of my big projects. And honestly, that was a really, really hard decision. Something inside made me realize it was something that I needed to do, but I couldn't let it go because I'm one of these people where I think that, you hear these phrases, you must work hard to get where you want to go, and you should be doing this. If other people are being supermen and superwomen, why can't you? And this is the record that you can sometimes play over and over in your own head. But sometimes it's not about working harder, it's about working smarter. And if we're pushing, 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 we're working on an energy level, a vibration of high stress, and we're not allowing some of the opportunities to actually knock on our door because we haven't got the time and we haven't got the energy, and we're not giving out the right energy to receive that either. So sometimes when you just stop that, you feel completely different, and you sometimes heal within that moment. It's absolutely amazing. I try to think of adrenal fatigue when it pops up in my life as having the flu. So it's like that whole mental health thing, isn't it? Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. So when you've got a flu or a cold, it's really easy because often you're streaming with phlegm and you're coughing, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, you look terrible. You should get back into bed." Now, from what I've experienced, adrenal fatigue is way more exhausting than actually having flu, and yet there's no symptoms. Okay. And I remember when I had visitors to come over and see me when I was living in Dubai, and it really upset me because I felt so ill, but I couldn't describe my symptoms. It was bizarre. I was like, I feel ill. I can't participate in life, but I don't know why. Now, when you've got flu, it's easy. You could go, you know what? Like, don't get me wrong, it's obviously horrible, but it's easy to just close the laptop or phone in sick or cancel your appointments and get into bed and go, do you know what? I'm ill. I need to recover. When you've got adrenal fatigue, it's so much different. That's why you have to work on your mind a little bit more. So try to think of it like that and go, do you know what? I need to sleep. Less guilt around going to bed and having some sleep. So there's three types of people. I'm going to give you three examples where now I've spoken a little bit about how stress builds. Think about, let's say, for example, I'll start with a woman in her 30s. She marries, okay? So it doesn't have to be a negative stress, okay? It can be positive. She marries, she has a baby. She then has a baby quite close after one another. She's got personal stresses going on, and then she's got the return to work. So if that is all building and there's no real kind of downtime, or she's not looking after her own well-being, you can see how fatigue can easily happen. She's going to have insomnia, she's going to have anxiety, she's going to have irritability, all these kind of things, right? Another one is, let's say, for example, a man, let's say 45, loses his job. Now, you're also looking at the kind of primal instinct of human beings in our psyche. So men generally tend towards that primal instinct of providing. So that's quite a big stress in that respect. Then maybe house stresses, splits from a relationship, and a parent dies. These are all big stresses. And then he might be saying to himself, well, I'm a man. I need to get through this. I'm not allowed to rest. I must keep going, right? Then a third case, a woman, for example, maybe same sort of age, 45, 55, something like this, been working really hard on her career throughout her life, but is experiencing up and down hormones due to perimenopause or menopause, for example, maybe even post-menopause where there's an imbalance there as well. Relationship stress or a recent break, plus, you can see how this person would also be impacted. Now, there's a fourth type of person. So this person might not have had any of these kind of build-up, might have been looking after themselves quite well, but they may have had a virus, right? So glandular fever, for example, if you've had something like this, it tends to have the same impact of adrenal fatigue to actually get going and get your energy back again. So that's something to keep in mind. So some of the symptoms of adrenal fatigue, if I've mentioned, is this insomnia. So you might be one of these people where either you can't get to sleep at night, or you're waking up around 3 o'clock in the morning. Does that sound familiar? Or you're waking up absolutely exhausted still. Now, these are absolute prime examples of adrenal fatigue. The 3 a.m. thing is because your cortisol levels are actually the wrong way around. So cortisol actually has a positive impact as well as a negative one. So the positive one is it gets you up in the morning. So it might mean that if your cortisol levels are the wrong way around, it might mean that you don't wake up until about 10 or 11 in the morning. Okay, and then you still need a load of coffee. Don't get me started on coffee, because it's a big no-no for adrenal fatigue, unfortunately. It doesn't actually wake you up, but it just depletes your adrenals even more. But I'll talk to you more about that on the webinar that I'm doing. I will drop the link for that, by the way, on this. So there's things you can do. I did a test to see where my cortisol was, and it's a saliva test. And it basically monitors and measures the spikes in your cortisol and your drops in your cortisol throughout the day, so you can identify where you are in your adrenal fatigue. So the other symptoms are that you might get a slump around 3 o'clock and rely on a coffee to come round. You might get quite a wave of energy after dinner. And other things like irritability, anxiety, I've mentioned, craving salt, craving sugar, forgetfulness, and brain fog are big ones as well. Okay. So as I said, stepping back, saying no, taking things out of your diary whenever you feel these things coming on, getting sleep, not feeling guilty about that. So what I want to do is come towards some of the tips, the 10 tips that I've got for you, because I'm already 20 minutes or so into this one and I don't want to take up all your afternoon. So these are my 10 tips. Now, there's a couple of things I will write down so you can see how they're spelt, but the first thing, surprisingly very, very easy, is to up your vitamin C. Okay. So you want to, if you're buying vitamin C capsules, you want to be getting the ones with the bioflavonoids, right? Because this is where the vitamin C is released in your guts rather than your stomach, and that's where it's properly absorbed. There's a little known around the fact that you can actually take way more vitamin C than what your daily allowance is. Even doctors recommend this as well, especially when you're ill and especially when you're stressed. So it's not just when you've got a cold or a flu, it's whenever you feel some kind of stress, right? So for example, I've got a cold at the moment and I had 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, and 3 in the evening. And my naturopathic friend told me to split them out throughout the day because we use up vitamin C really quickly. Now, another point to mention here is that if you take iron for tiredness, is that you want to also be taking vitamin C with your iron tablet because it helps you to absorb it. So you want to up your vitamin B complex as well. That's for energy too. Just be careful about the supplements that you buy as well, because quality really does impact the how you absorb it in your body. Now, sole, I'm going to spell this one out. Sole, and I was going to show you this actually, but I forgot to bring it. So hopefully that's come out the right way. S-O-L-E. Sole is basically a jar of Himalayan rock salt, about an inch or so, filled with water until it's completely dissolved with a few crystals at the bottom, which means that it's actually still quite potent. What you do is you get a teaspoon of that, a teaspoon of the water itself, the pink water, and you put it in a large glass of water with lemon and you drink that. It's basically nature's electrolyte. It's amazing for adrenal fatigue. It's got so many minerals in there. In the morning, maybe in the afternoon if you're particularly fatigued. Ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is an adaptogen herb. So if you've not heard of adaptogen herbs before, I went on a Herbs for Health course. Actually, that's where I met Gabby many years ago. And adaptogens work with a person's individual makeup. So if you have got too much cortisol, it will reduce it. And if you've got not enough, it will increase it. Like, come on. How amazing is that? This is nature, people. So ashwagandha powder. I'll write it here. It's basically, if you can see it, ash is in the tree, ash, wag, H-A-N-D-A, ashwagandha. You can get that in powder. Okay, and you can just mix it into a little drink. Magnesium salt baths. I'm sure you've heard so much about Epsom salt baths and things like this, but they are more powerful than you think. So magnesium's really good for sleeping as well, but it's also good for your sex hormones too. So rebalancing your hormones. You want to be putting quite a bit in there. So if you buy some beautiful, gorgeous smelling salts, Throw a load of plain ones in as well. Buy a bulk, like a 5 kilo bag, and throw a big cup through of salts. You're absorbing it straight into your system. So it's beautifully healing, but also the bath. Okay, so it's relaxing your body. It's giving yourself that time to relax. You can put your aromatherapy in there. Also, if you're not using it, is just so powerful. But again, we don't often see it as powerful. You want to do a little bit of reading on your aromatherapy, because some of them will burn your bum if you go into the bath. But of course, putting it on your pillow and stuff like that is just beautiful. Geranium, lavender, neroli are my favourite for that. But I do have a blog on tips for anxiety, which has got a lot of this in there and loads more. So I'll drop that link as well. I've also got a video in there it's called the spirals, when you're going up or down your negative spiral and how to get out of it. So more relaxation, you want to give yourself more and more rest, more than the normal person when you are feeling fatigued. So I've got a free yoga class coming on the 16th online. It's at 8 p.m. It's in my Inspiring Wires tribe. I'll drop the link for that. Music. So if it's impacting your mood, get some music on as well. That's going to be helping change your mood. Increase your protein. Loads more protein, even protein shakes. I've got a really good pea protein one. It's a vegan one, and I use that almost every day. Nature. So nature, not only is it going to give you exercise if you can do a little bit of walking, but the frequency of nature is the same as what is found in the mantra Om. Okay. But also there's been a lot of evidence to show that the colours of nature, the greens and the blues and the earthy colours, also change your mood. So wholesome food. If you haven't got the energy to make some wholesome food and there's somebody with you that can, please reach out and ask someone to make you something, healing. As I say, in the Adrenal Fatigue bundle, we will have some meal plans for that. When you're feeling a bit better, how about just put some soups together and then put them in your freezer, and they can be your go-to when you can't be bothered. Work with the mindset. So this is number 9. Got 10 for you. Like I say, I use techniques in hypnotherapy and NLP. There's loads of free stuff that I have in my Inspiring Wires tribe group to work with this. And number 10, listen to your body. I have been sat there when I've been on my laptop going, I just need to finish this email. I just need to, and it's that wading through water again. And it's like, no. So these things are not easy. I'm not saying that they're easy, especially the mindset stuff. Rewiring how you think and how you approach life is not easy, but it's absolutely possible. So whenever you catch yourself doing that, just shut that laptop and go, right, I'm done, right? So what can absolutely wait? So for example, I was due to launch my membership towards the end of this year, and I've just put that on the back shelf. I'm actually focusing on my Adrenal Fatigue bundle because you know what? I don't want to get adrenal fatigue again. So we have to make these decisions. We can't be supermen and women, and we have to drop things. We have to let some stuff go. We cannot do it all, okay? Drop the shoulds and the have-tos and be your own hero. This is what I want to do. So this is where what I do comes in. So I create space for wellness through wellbeing festivals, retreats and online courses. So I've got all sorts of things. Insomnia bundle, adrenal fatigue bundle. I've got 10-day resets that are for daily mindset changing, for journaling, for all sorts of bits that work with your mind and yoga and stuff like this. So really, if you watch the video that's on my blog about tips and techniques for anxiety, you'll learn a bit more about the spiral and how to get yourself back out of it. But it's about learning about yourself, getting more self-awareness, figuring out what works for you, and going from there. So I hope that was useful. I hope that was helpful. I'm just going to check if there's any comments here. Hi Sue, lovely. Yes, it'll be on replay. It'll be available to watch anytime. As I say, I'm going to be doing a full 1-hour free webinar on the 22nd of November. It's at 8 p.m. It's a Sunday. I'll drop the link in there. Just sign up to that and you'll get loads more information and question and answers and things like this. So all I want to say is if you're feeling really crappy right now, it will not last forever. You will get out of it. I know that your mood is impacted. I know that you feel like you want to do everything and you just feel like you can't participate in life. I get that. I get the anxiety. What you have to do is just drop some stuff, Be kind to yourself, rest, sleep, eat well, take those extra bits that are going to help you, and then slowly build yourself back. I remember when I first said to my mum, when I got diagnosed, they said, "Oh, it could take 6 months to 2 years." And I turned around to my mum and said, "I'll do it in 3 months." Now, that was the kind of headspace that we don't want to be in. As a result, it took me longer than 2 years, okay? So we have to learn to slow down. This is our big life lesson. You're most welcome, Rue, Nikki, Sue, and I'll see you again. Bye for now. Thank you so much, Sue, as well, for inviting me to come and do this talk. It's been an absolute pleasure. And